Hey, what's up, VC? It's Tim. My name's Vinyl, your friendly neighborhood vinyl guy. What the hell is going on with my Johnny Bravo hair? I have no, excuse me, it's going to drive me nuts. Anyway, there's been some different vinyl tags going around. I'm going to throw my hat into the genre ring with hip hop. So anyway, I have the questions. Let's get to it. The first one is share your first hip hop purchase. Now, I wish I still had my original purchase of this single, but this is where it all began, not just for me, but for a lot of people, and that's Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang. A lot of history behind this one. This was one that kind of started at least the airwaves to take notice of hip hop, and it really started to soar from there. I mean, you know, we started to see more and more groups start to come out from the whole scene that was happening in New York. You know, Blondie had a huge part in that, obviously, with Rapture, and mentioning Fab Five Freddy and kind of getting more and more people interested in what was happening in that New York scene. But that was truly my first purchase, which a lot of my family was like, what the hell is this? And I was like, yeah, it's mine, I don't care. So first hip hop purchase. So question number 2 is share an 80s hip hop album. You know, that would be kind of like maybe the old school era. Some people consider that the golden age of hip hop. And I'm gonna show the first full-length, the debut album from Big Daddy Kane. This is Long Live the Kane. This is an original press on, sorry for the glare, on Cold Chillin' Records. So Cold Chillin' was the brainchild of Marley Marl, who started the Juice Crew. He started it with MC Shannon, Roxanne Shante, and then continued on from there with people like Biz Markie, Big Daddy Kane, Cool G Rap and Polo, Master Ace, you know, and just kind of went on from there. This is considered in the 80s realm a classic. So if you don't know this one, highly recommend it. Kane at the time was really known for his prowess with lyricism. Really just could put words together really well. And by that point, we were starting to see more wordplay, double entendres, more exercising of patterns and flow. And Kane was definitely one of the early masters of that. So that's my pick for the 80s album. Question number 3 is a 90s hip hop album. This one just squeaks in, came out in '99. And sadly, we actually just lost this gentleman. And I'm speaking of Darkman X, or commonly known as DMX. This is his 1999 album, and then there were X, and then there was X. This one gave us the monster hit Party Up in Here. It also had the song What's My Name, which was another big hit for him. Like I said, sadly, we lost him recently. Definitely a powerhouse. He had one of those voices that just cut through. And, you know, he kind of brought that. You know, he definitely practiced what he preached, both kind of the bad, you know, with what he talked about. He kind of lived that life, but, you know, he had some messages on here too that were worth listening to and taking to heart. So DMX, and then there was X. Rest in peace, my friend. You are sorely missed. Question 4 is a show an album from the 2000s and beyond. So it doesn't get any more 2000s than a couple days ago. And that's the vinyl release of Eminem's Music to Be Murdered By, the B-side deluxe edition. So this album technically came out in 2020. Actually, the end of 2019 was the Music to Be Murdered By, and then he announced that he was doing the deluxe B-side, not separately. So if you wanted to buy them, you had to buy them again. So I'm kind of glad I waited and just went with this one. So this is actually a 4 LP set, and it is done on I haven't even had a chance to spin this yet, to be perfectly honest. This is not something I really want to play when Oliver's awake. I mean, let's face it, Eminem says a thing or two. But it's on wonderfully slick looking gray vinyl. I am not an Eminem completist by any stretch of the means. That's not taking away from his lyrical ability. I think lyrically, he is probably one of the most gifted MCs we've seen. He just has this ability to put words together, put patterns together, flows. He can rap extremely fast and sound clear as a bell doing it. And I love the fact that sometimes you really have to look at what he's written to kind of catch all the triple entendres and wordplay jokes and things like that. I respect that, and I love that a lot. But I just don't always connect with all his music. Nothing against him, but so I'm picky with what I buy from him. But his last two, Kamikaze and Music to Be Murdered By, I thought lyrically have been some of his best and really top notch. So if you've kind of stepped away from Eminem, I get it. Trust me, you're preaching to the choir on that one. But this one is really worth checking out, I think, if nothing else, for some amazing lyrical ability. Number 5 is a label that you associate with hip hop. And to me, there are several. I'm not going to mention them all because I think that we'll see if other people do these. We'll see some of these get mentioned. To me, this was just kind of like a no-brainer with basically having been gifted recently one of the Gentleman's albums. And that's Bad Boy Records. This is the Notorious B.I.G.'s second album, which was done and mastered before his death. So this was not altered in any way, shape, or form because he was just recently killed before this came out. But this one is just an incredible powerhouse. So Biggie's first album, Ready to Die, dealt with the struggles of young black men in these areas where there just felt like there was no way out. And what sense was there for trying to even do any better? And while he painted a very vivid picture, the message was pretty clear. But he did that for a reason. That's where he was. That's where he kind of fell into when he was making that album. He was like, I have nothing else to lose. It's either this or, he said it in the song Things Done Change, either you slinging crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot. And this one, by this point, he's got a daughter. He's lyrically a king. He's the king in New York, and he does show people there is life after the bad. That it can get better, and that's really a message that he was trying to bring home on a lot of these songs. Was that it can get better. Sadly, we will never see the greatness of Biggie and how well he could have continued to rise. But these two albums that he gave us, to me, 10 out of 10 masterpieces. And lyrically, he's tough to hang with. He is just so smooth on the mic. So at a label I associate with him, Bad Boy Records, obviously you had Diddy and Lil' Kim and Craig Mack and Black Rob, who we just lost, and just a bunch of people. So it really was a powerhouse for hip hop. 6 is a hip hop single. Obviously, I've talked at length before about, being a DJ, and we kind of lived and died by the 12-inch single or the 7-inch single, because they were just mixed louder and stuff like that. So I am trying to rebuild my vast collection of 12-inch singles. They also had some great remixes and instrumentals and acapellas, which are fun. So this one is kind of hard to see. I'm gonna try to take it here. I'll take it out of the sleeve. It's on the Idlers label. This is the Jungle Brothers off their debut album, and this is their self-titled single, Straight Out the Jungle, off of their first album. I really wanted to pick this one up because on the B side, there is a song called The Promo. And The Promo is the very first time we get to hear Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest. So if I remember correctly, he is a cousin of, I think it's, I can't remember if he's a cousin of Mike G. He's a cousin of one of the guys in the Jungle Brothers, and that's kind of where it started. So they brought in Q-Tip, who originally the group was just called Quest. They convinced them to change the name to A Tribe Called Quest, and the rest is history. But that's where the Native Tongue started. We also had De La Soul, and Queen Latifah, and Moni Love, and just Black Sheep, just a slew of others. So important single to me, Straight Out the Jungle by the Jungle Brothers. Number 7 is a female hip hop artist, and it wasn't long after that hip hop really started to shine that females felt that they wanted to get their turn on the mic, and we had, people like Roxanne Shante, who got involved in the whole back and forth because of the Roxanne single by UTFO, Salt and Pepper, which hit it massively big. But to me, there was the one crowning queen of female MCs, and it wasn't Queen Latifah. I mean, I love her. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely adore her. But for me, it was MC Lyte, and this is her album, Bad As I Wanna Be. MC Lyte had a delivery and flow that was unpredictable at times. It was raw. It was very, very urban and street. She could out-rap a lot of fellas. I mean, you get her in a circle with a bunch of guys and her, she's going to destroy a lot of those guys on the mic, and she just did it her way. From rapping about, relationships in Paper Thin, to a really crazy story on Cappuccino, to really getting down and dirty with a song called Roughneck. She never, ever failed to bring lyrical content in a unique way. She'll forever be my favorite female MC. And everybody who is on now or was big paid respects at this altar. You can hear it in Lauryn Hill, you can hear it in Rhapsody, you can hear it in Eve, Lady of Rage. You can hear their hunger and their energy from MC Lyte. So, female MC, MC Lyte, all day. Number 7 is an artist we lost, and it seems like we lose so many hip hop artists at a younger age. Some through horrible circumstances, some through horrible health situations. And then there's just the ones that we don't know what happened. End of last year, it was announced that we lost MF Doom. He actually died on Halloween. They didn't even tell us. In typical MF Doom fashion, they didn't even tell us to the end of the year. So we couldn't even process it. I respect the family for wanting to keep it private, but at the end of the day, it's like, here we go. We lost another one. So this is his album that he did with Madlib. Madlib is just an insane producer who has a wonderful ear for the avant-garde sample. He can make something out of the strangest places. He's not afraid to go deep into prog. Excuse me. He actually reworked a whole bunch of jazz classics for the Blue Note label, which I highly recommend people check out. It's called Shades of Blue by Madlib. Madlib is just a super mad talented producer, and you get someone like MF Doom on the mic who is unpredictable, lyrical as all hell. You're in for a classic. So much so that my buddy John over at the Digital Gramophone just featured this in one of his top 200 albums. Rightfully so. This is a lyrical powerhouse of an album that isn't your typical hip hop album. The lyrics are different, and they're, like I said, they're very avant-garde. Sometimes he can have whole bars rhyme with each other. Sometimes you think he's going nowhere, and then he'll just wrap it all back up, and you're like, I get it. It's the Mad Villain genius. Sorry we lost you, Doom. You're incredible. And I have next at number 9, a posthumous album. So unfortunately, a lot of times what you'll see is it's a big scoop to get all of the tapes and demos out. Death Row, I think, made a career out of doing that with Tupac. I mean, half his albums were after we lost him. But one came to mind. One, because I don't think he gets talked enough about, because we lost him so quickly in his career. And that's Big L. And this is his officially second album. We had already lost him, and it's called The Big Picture. So Big L was part of the Digging in the Crates crew. Big L was, that was Diamond D, that was Lord Finesse. Blanking out on some other people who were in the Digging in the Crates crew, but he came from that stable. And lyrically, I mean, he had punchlines that would just send rooms overboard. Lyrically, his flow was tight, it was energetic, his wordplay was ridiculous, but his mind, he just thought of some really clever ways of putting things. One of them that stood out was, I'm so far ahead of myself that my parents haven't even met yet. Just, just creative. I just absolutely loved his wordplay. Sadly, he looked just like his brother. And his brother was involved in some shady dealings, and we lost him to mistaken identity. I mean, I'm not going to start getting on a soapbox about anything on this. I'm just here to kind of talk about the music, but what a lyrical juggernaut. And if you're not familiar with him, do yourself a favor. If you're a hip hop fan, check out Big L. You will not be sorry. Number 10, I have something from your favorite producer. Now, everyone knows I've talked about DJ Shadow a lot, and I love him for a producer of his own music. And I don't think he necessarily does a bad job. I think he does a quite good job when he produces beats for other people. But he's not my favorite in that regard. He's not my favorite when it comes to, making beats for other people. And it really came down to two. And I had to ask myself, who had an impact more on my sound, on my ear, and making my head nod? So I got to give the nod to J Dilla. J Dilla did a lot of work on the Far Side's second album, Lab Cabin, California. Their first one, Bizarre Ride to the Far Side, kind of put them on. They were very tongue-in-cheek. They were very comical. But lyrically good. I don't think a lot of people took them as seriously as they could have had, because it was more comedy, more punchline humor, more, instead of it trying to be like the hardcore guy. These are four guys living, in horrible conditions. They're just trying to, duck the cops and smoke a J and go about their day. And they did it in a funny way, which was great. But it didn't have the staying power, although that first album gave me a hell of a classic. But they had these moments of maturity. Dilla brought that all out on the second album. From songs like Something That Means Something, Run and Drop, this album is just saturated with that J Dilla goodness. The goodness that Dilla brought to the table was uncanny. He heard a sample. If it took him more than 15 minutes to make the beat, he said it wasn't there. He was not afraid to walk away and come back. What I also appreciated about Dilla that I never really knew until I really started to listen to him was that when he played the drums on his MPC sampler, he didn't do it like putting in a bar or a measure and looping it. He played them. He wanted it to be occasionally offbeat. He wanted it to sound raw, like a drummer. No drummer is systematically going to hit that mark unless you're playing to a tick. And because he did that, it just gave it more organic feeling. So it's hard for me to not mention my other favorite because I really, really love him, but I had to give the nod to Dilla. So my favorite producer, J Dilla. Question 11. Someone you have at least 3 albums of. There's many I could have pulled. But when you're talking about 90s lyricists, there aren't too many sitting at the top. And I mean the top. Nas. His classic Hip Hop Is Dead. The Lost Tapes. God's Son. Stillmatic, which probably has one of the best diss tracks ever done. You want to hear him hand somebody his ass? Listen to Ether. Jay-Z had no comeback for that. And probably in my top 3 hip-hop albums of all time, Illmatic. Nas just had this prowess when it came to flow, telling a story, putting these words together, and painting that picture. The only thing that I could ever knock on any of Nas's albums was the production. I think that sometimes his production beat selection made me question, why did you go with that? But lyrically, I've never heard him have a misstep. He's one of the best for a reason. And I'll pretty much buy anything he does. So an album I have several of, or somebody I have several of, Nas for sure. Number 12, a Posse Cut. Bo knows this, Bo knows that, but Bo don't know jack because Bo can't rap. Well, what do you know? The Didog is first up the bat. The batteries included, no strings attached. Scenario by far is probably one of the most recognizable Posse Cuts of all time. The only one that I can think of that might surpass it in the hip hop world would be the Symphony, which I'm tracking down. It was not uncommon for getting in the studio and then getting your friends, putting them on, is what they called it. Getting them in, having them write a hot 8, 16, whatever the case may be, and putting them on a cut. Sometimes it was they were getting ready to sign a deal. Sometimes it was great exposure to help them get a deal, whatever the case may be. But it was a great way to help out your friends. Leaders of the new school, I think at this point, were already starting to make a little bit of noise. But sadly, there was hardly a lot of infighting. But we found out that Busta Rhymes, Dinko D, and Charlie Brown were ruthless when it came to a Posse Cut because they created one of the best of all time. You sandwich in there Q-Tip and Phife Dawg, you got your makings for a classic. So much so that when they remixed it, the remix, all new lyrics and a new beat, was just as hot. Scenario. Rest in peace, Phife. Number 13, a song everybody knows. We all have those few hip-hop songs that have kind of transcended the culture, have kind of become staples of all cultures, of all music genres. You hear it, you know it. House of Pain's Jump Around. To be perfectly honest, I am not the biggest fan of House of Pain. They're okay. They're getting a vinyl reissue. I passed. I'm happy to have the CD and maybe get the single of Sam Rock and Shenanigans on wax and Jump Around. That being said, Jump Around is a monster. We all know it. It gets played at sporting events. It gets played at parties. You hear that horn cut through and you know what you're in for. We all know the words. We all know the song very well. It wasn't DJ Lethal that did it either. It was actually DJ Muggs from Cypress Hill. Maybe that's why it had that little flavor. I don't know. But regardless, House of Pain created an anthem with Jump Around, a song everybody knows. Number 14, your favorite MC. If you know me and we've talked hip hop, you know this answer. If you don't know me or we haven't talked hip hop, you're probably curious. You may be able to take a guess and stab at it. There are many that I would consider top tier A1. You don't want to mess with lyricists. Whether it's a battle situation, bar for bar, I can think of 30 quickly off the top of my head that are just not to be trifled with. But there is one at the top of the pyramid. The God MC, Rakim. I consider Rakim to be the best MC of all time because he did things in a completely different manner that was happening at that time. Everything back then was, if you listen to a song like Curtis Blow's These Are the Breaks or anything of that era, even Sugar Hill Gang or stuff like that, it was very much predictable. You could almost predict the next line or at least predict the rhyme, even not hearing the song before, because it was predictable. It was safe. It was okay though. It was new. Rakim challenged all of that. He was the first person to use wordplay and double entendres. He used punchlines and jokes. He also was the first one to let the line extend the bar. So maybe the rhyme fell in the middle of the word, but the bar continued on over into the next line and wrapped around. He challenged everything, all over sampled beats that nobody else was doing at the time. He literally changed the game with this album. And every album he has ever done, which sadly is not nearly enough, but every album that he has ever done has had track after track after track of just a masterclass in lyricism. He's not a battle rapper. He's not going to be one of these guys that's going to, rap at blazing speeds like Twista, Eminem, Joyner Lucas, or anything. But he changed everything in the blink of an eye. And every time he raps, every time he puts out an album, there are so many wonderful moments. It just can't be denied. Pound for pound, my favorite MC of all time, Rakim. Number 15, the final question. Ooh, your favorite hip hop album of all time. You would think for someone like me who grew up with hip hop, was raised around hip hop is in my DNA. This would be a hard choice, but it's not. Over the years, time and time again, I have heard amazing 10 out of 10 masterpiece albums. But to me, it still doesn't break the pinnacle of Public Enemy's second album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. Public Enemy came out with Yo Bum Rush the Show, being signed after Russell Simmons heard Rick Rubin heard a demo that was given to the Beastie Boys, called him up and said, you need to get this guy, get these guys signed fast because they've got it. So they're in the studio, they're doing Yo Bum Rush the Show, and everything starts to change around them. They're still political, and they're still doing that what they eventually became known for, which was the knowledge-based, presenting a message in their music. But the sound changed. So what do? We have to go back into the album. The second album's got to really be a different sound. They created the Bomb Squad. Bomb Squad was Chuck D and the Shockley brothers, Hank and Keith. And they created this wall of sound, sometimes using 20 to 30 samples on a song, to create this noise that was ready to start a riot. But what it started was a revolution. They got people listening, they got people thinking, they challenged the status quo. They were 1 foot in the jazz realm, they were 1 foot in the punk realm, and they married them both perfectly on this album and the follow-up Fear of a Black Planet. To me, there has never been another important, totally, relevant still to this day, masterpiece as this album. Listen to this album now and tell me it still doesn't hold up. I gotta question your thinking. This album will never be topped, in my opinion, when it comes to hip hop. This was perfection. I really enjoyed putting these together. Hopefully you enjoyed watching them, or if nothing else, just let me ramble on about hip hop for a little bit. I'm gonna try to put the questions down below if you'd like to play along. If you wanna add some, go right ahead. If you wanna use any format, I don't care. But I would appreciate it if you do it. Let me know, because I'd like to definitely check it out and see your take on it as well. Peace. Love you.